Alexa, clap.
Okay.
Hello everyone, my name is Stanley St. Rose, and today we're going to be talking about War and Peace. Now, before I go into summary analysis of this work, please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and or comment so that the channel can continue to grow. Now, if you have read War and Peace, you deserve an applause. Alexa, clap.
Okay.
Now, War and Peace is just it's a long book. It's over 1,000 pages long. There's so many characters, and the thing is, like, these are not characters that you can sleep on. They are well-rounded characters, and they deserve your attention. That's just simply put, they deserve your attention. Um, this book just talks about everything. There's so much that this book's covered, from war, and of course, War and Peace, from war to peace to lust to incest to history and war and family and the meaning of life and existentialism. This book talks about the class system and finances and riches and wealth and marriage and children. It talks about everything. To me, it feels like a work of philosophy. It's also a story, a narrative, whatever you can throw at this book. There's epilogues and chapters and books. It's just, there's so much in this book. Over 1,000 pages, so many characters. You need patience to read this book. You need persistence to read this book. I did not read this book in one sitting. I don't know who can read it in one sitting. I read a few chapters, then I took a break, and then I came back and kept on reading. I kept on doing that until I finished it. Really good book. You can't, the wars, the battles are really long. They go on for hundreds of pages. And you can't skip those, because if you skip those, you won't understand the characters fully, because the wars are that those wars help shape the characters. So the wars can be daunting and monotonous, but you should definitely read them. Don't skip over them. It's a tough book, including the epilogue and the essays at the end. There's a lot that Leo Tolstoy is throwing at you. So yeah, very good book. I would recommend reading it if you haven't read it. It can be tough to get through it, but soldier on. You can do it. So we're going to talk about the summary and analysis and the deeper meanings of this work now. Please forgive me if I butcher some of these Russian names and some of these French names. I practice saying the names, but it is tough. And a lot of these characters have nicknames, and so it's and some of these characters have several names. So I'm gonna stick to one name for each and every one of them. They each will have one name. I will not use the series of names that some characters have. So yeah, that's yeah. Let's talk about this summary. Let's talk about what goes on. At the beginning of the novel, we're introduced to Pierre Bezakov. Pierre Bezakov is the illegitimate son of Count Bezakov, who pretty much dies from the get-go. The Count dies. He has several strokes. He dies. The family is they're really alarmed, because they're like, what's going to happen to his money? Because as soon as he dies, they want their half of the money, of his money. But everything goes to Pierre, and he has the power of the purse. He's pulling the purse strings. And he's at first they hated him. At first they were mad at him. But he's a good guy. He shares the money. Everybody gets a piece of the pie, and he takes care of Count Bezakov's family, his family, right? He takes care of his cousins and the princesses. Um, Pierre, he gets into so much money that throughout the novel, there's places where his finances dip, but he never becomes poor. He's just so wealthy. He's just too powerful, too rich, too wealthy to fail. He has several estates, several houses, several properties. I mean, he owns landscapes, he owns serfs, he owns a lot of property. So the novel goes on. So we get introduced to the Bezakov family, and all that goes on within that family. And then Pierre, after he gets everything, he gets married to Ellen Kuragin. So the Kuragins are that's another family, and they're not good people. The Kuragins, Ellen Kuragin and Anatole Kuragin, they're both attractive individuals. Ellen is pretty much carved out of marble. Ellen is this woman, the way that her arms, her legs, her shoulders, her body, her hair, her face, everything about her is just beauty. Every man wants her. Every man, whenever she walks into a room, they snap their heads back to just see her. She's beautiful. Every man wants her. Pierre gets her because of his status, because of his power, because of his wealth. And the marriage's not a happy marriage. We also learned that Ellen and Anatole, brother and sister, they have a sexual relationship, or there's a rumor going around saying that they had a sexual relationship, or that was going on. Now Pierre still married Ellen while this rumor was going on, and yes, that is stated. That is something that is present within the work. Now, Tolstoy does not explore this, but it is stated. But if you watch the movie or the series based on War and Peace, you do see those sex scenes between Anatole and Ellen, and it's very disturbing. They're brother and sister. They're both attractive. They're both could get any individual that they want, but somehow they end up having something between each other, which is very unsettling. So these are the Kuragins, Prince Vasily, that's their father. The prince, Ellen and Kuragin, and Anatole Kuragin, the Kuragins, they're all about getting success, getting profits, getting money, and upward mobility. They're not good people, especially Anatole, because he's all about, womanizing, drinking, having a good old time, hedonism, and sex, and all that kind of stuff. So Anatole's not a wonderful a human being. He actually dies within the novel. His leg gets cut up in war, like his leg, they cut it off. He dies. Ellen dies also. She cheats a lot. She had a husband. Pierre's her husband, but she cheats on Pierre. She cheats. There you go. She cheats on Pierre a lot. She gets pregnant. She aborts the baby, but it was a botched abortion, and she ends up dying as well. The baby dies and she dies. So that's the Kuragins. That's what happens to them. The prince, their father survives, and he keeps climbing upward mobility. We get introduced to the Rostovs, and now the novel doesn't introduce us to these characters like this. I'm just telling you their stories, because that will just make more sense and make this video much faster and put a nice bow on everything. So the Rostovs, we have Count Rostov, Countess Rostov. This is a love couple. They're very happy. They're very rich. But the thing is, Count Rostov, he ruins the wealth. He's not a good manager of wealth. And the family goes bankrupt by the end of the novel. And it's up to Nikolai Rostov to build back his family wealth. And he does. Now, Nikolai Rostov was supposed to get married to his cousin. Now, again, this novel starts off in 1805, so I guess, it was cool for people to marry their cousins back then. So, originally, Nikolai Rostov was supposed to get married to Sonia, his cousin. But that doesn't happen, and Sonya's life actually ends up to the point where she doesn't marry anybody, she doesn't have any children, she just stays like an unfertile flower, and she doesn't marry anybody. She watches the man that she loved marry somebody else. That's sad. That's all in the Rostov family. The Rostov, the child of the Rostov, other than the Nikolai Rostov, we really focus on Natalia Rostov. Her story is very fascinating. At a very young age, she first fell in love with Boris. That doesn't work out. Boris ends up getting married to Julie, another rich woman that's not that pretty, but she inherits a lot of wealth. So, Boris marries her for the money. And also keep in mind at this time, a lot of people, especially in the upper classes of society, they married for wealth and power in the estates, not for the 21st century definition of love and romance and togetherness. So Boris and Natalie, Natalia, Natasha, different names. But Natasha here, she falls in love with several different individuals. Boris was the first. Then it was Prince Andrei Bulkhonsky. I think I'm pronouncing that right. They were engaged, Natalia, and okay. Just for the sake of this video, I'm gonna keep calling her Natalia. Okay. Some people call her Natasha, and then there's also nicknames. But for this character, I'm gonna call her Natalia. So Natalia, she was engaged to Prince Andrei Bolkonsky. The engagement was delayed for a year, but then it was broken off because of Anatole, because Anatole wanted to hurt Prince Andrei and also have sex with Natasha. Oh my God, Natalia, and pretty much what happens is that they tried to elope. And it didn't work. And she learns that Anatole was only in it for lust and hedonism, and she attempted suicide on herself, it didn't work. She doesn't die. She's nursed back to health, and her life seems grim. And then throughout the novel, we see this love that blooms between Natalia and Pierre. So the novel goes on, and we see the conflict between Russia and Napoleon. I'm gonna say Napoleon because he's pretty much this. Everything's based on Napoleon here. He's like this genius, this man who is above every other man. This emperor that is pretty much taken over Europe. And within this novel, we see him trying to take over Russia. So that conflict keeps coming up and keeps building throughout the novel. So the Rostovs are not in a good position. Nikolai Rostov, he actually he's a soldier, and also Prince Andrei is a soldier as well. They move back and forth from war to peace. Handling matters of the heart, handling matters of war, handling matters of the family. Throughout the novel, we see Sonia, she's trying to get married. We see Natalia, she's trying to get married. The Rostovs they're just trying to survive. Nikolai Rostov, he promised he was engaged to Sonia. He promised to marry her, but later he realized that Sonia had no money. His cousin had no money, and Princess Maria was probably a better choice because she had a large inheritance, and he could probably save his family with the inheritance of Princess Maria, and he does within the novel, late at the end of the novel. So that's the Rostov family. We'll go into the Bulkhonsky family. And now, again, these names, excuse me with the names are tough, but the Bulkhonsky family is where you have Count Bulkhonsky, you have Prince Andrei Bolkonsky, Princess Maria Bolkonsky, and we also have the son of Prince Andrei that comes into existence because he had to be born. This family is they have a lot of wealth, just like the Bezakovs, and the Count Bolkonsky, he dies within the novel. At first he didn't want Princess Maria to leave him to get married, but later in the novel, he pretty much is this hell on earth for Princess Maria. He treats her badly. He does a lot of heinous things towards her, but he also somehow loves her. He ends up dying, and when he dies, Princess Maria is in of a way happy, but in of a way sad. So he's a good father when he had all of his wits about him. He had all his consciousness with him, but when he gets into old age, he really treats everyone around him with poor behavior, and he treats them all badly. He ends up dying, and Princess Maria inherits everything, all of the wealth of the Bolkonsky family. Princess Andrei also dies, otherwise it would have been all his stuff, all of his money, all of his estates. But he also dies. He dies because of a war womb. I think I'm saying that right. Yeah. He dies, and all the money's left to Princess Maria. Now, Princess Maria is deeply, deeply, deeply religious. She even, one of my favorite lines within the novel is where she says, listen, Jesus told us that life is only temporary. It's kind of a shame that a lot of people are wasting their time toiling with the trifles of the earth and the problems of the earth, when it's all just for an instance, and then we're all supposed to die and either go to heaven or fire in hell. So she puts it way more beautifully, but I found that to be very fascinating. She's a very spiritual woman. She's very devoted to people, to God. The most disturbing part of the novel, well, one of the most disturbing part of the novel for me, is when she's first described. Tolstoy describes her as being so hideous and so ugly that no man wanted her. I was like, damn, why do you have to treat this girl like this? The character, when we're first introduced to Princess Maria, we're told that, they tried everything. They tried every dress. They tried, dresses that push things up, dresses that slim things down, dresses that try to shape her figures, mold her figure. We're just told that her face was just hideous. Her body was just it seemed like no guy wanted her. And if any guy was ever going to marry her, it would have to be because of her finances. We were just told that this girl just looked horrible, and I was like, man, God, that's a little extreme. But she does get married to Nikolai Rostov, and it's not just because of her wealth and power. That does play a big part of it. But at the same time, Nikolai Rostov actually loves her genuinely, actually loves her because of her spirit, the spiritual side of her. Nikolai Rostov sees the spiritual side of her as this angelic, pure, beautiful, holy thing that's his when he gets married to her. And he's totally in love with Princess Maria. So even though that, she wasn't that attractive or sexy in terms of society's eyes, Nikolai was like, man, I need that. Listen, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Beauty is definitely in the eye of the beholder. Especially how, Tolstoy went into telling us how ugly this person looked, which that was very unnecessary. But I'm not the famous masterpiece writer here, so I can't judge. The son, Andre dies. Prince Andre Bolkhonsky dies within the novel. His son survives him, and his son grows up, very troubled because his mom died giving birth to him, and his dad died at war. And the count, his grandfather, was just a horrible man that treated everyone badly at the tail end of his life. And Princess Maria was literally all that he had. She didn't really, have that much love to give him as a mother would. So yeah. Okay, so that's the Bolkonskys. After that, there's some other major families, but Boris and his mother, Anna Mikhailovna, I might be butchering that, but Anna Mikhailovna and Boris, they are all they're up about upward mobility and success. Boris marries a woman by the name of Julie, there was an instance, Boris was actually, this was actually very fascinating. Boris actually thought about marrying Princess Maria. He was actually attracted to her too, which is very fascinating. But he doesn't end up marrying her. He reluctantly marries Julie, who's another girl that Tolstoy went into and told us how ugly and unpleasant she was. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, that's two. Tolstoy really goes into, like, when he doesn't like a character, or not doesn't like, when he want to tell you how beautiful a person is, Tolstoy will let you know. When he wants to tell you how ugly someone is, Tolstoy will let you know. Like, he will paint a picture of ugliness. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. But yeah, Boris marries this other rich woman that comes into a rich inheritance by the name of Julie, and he becomes rich and powerful when he was, he didn't have any finances and wealth when he was first born. Throughout the novel, so those are the major people we focus on, the major families we focus on. There's some other major individuals, but you will get the sense of the novel through those characters. We get accounts of the war in Europe. We get accounts of everything that happened in 1812. From 1805 to 1812, all the major battles. Eventually what happens in terms of the war. So I've told you all about the characters. So now this is what happens in terms of war. Napoleon, with all of his pride and arrogance, and I would say big ego, he's just walking into Europe, taking over lands, beating up people, slaughtering people. They love him. They're cheering him on. They're just, Napoleon, you're amazing. Europe loves them. He's killing people. He goes into Africa, kills a bunch of people, goes into Europe, kills a bunch of people. He just kills everywhere. He's just, you get killed, you get killed, you get killed. I'm not, this was a tough time. War is never funny, okay, that was too much by my side. But still, Napoleon was just literally walking around, just killing people. He becomes the emperor of everything, basically. He goes, with a big chest, goes into Russia. He's telling the Russian people, I'm going to take over everything. The Russians do the best that they can. They burn villages, they burn towns, they try to get rid of the French. They go to battle with the French. Their army really get defeated a lot. The French end up making it to Moscow. They take over Moscow. All the Russians pretty much leave Moscow, go to Petersburg. People are running to and fro. People are dying in the cold. People are being slaughtered. People are being killed. A lot of the battles and all of the wars felt like it was just like piles of meat, just chopping heads off, it was bloody, nasty. And this is 1805 to 1812. 1805 to 1813. And, you could imagine what the medical care was like. So, you had physicians with dirty fingers, treating people with alcohol and yeah, treating people with alcohol, sticking their fingers into wounds, and just, doing the best that they can to save people. No sterile equipment, no, at war, I mean, if you get shot, you're pretty much done for. People are dying left and right. The French get to Moscow. Napoleon pretty much loses control of his army because they pillage, they're raping, they're stealing, they're looting, they're beating, they're arresting, they're killing. The French army goes into anarchy when they're in Moscow. And the thing is, like, a lot of the French are walking around like they're studs, and they're like, man, what a shame, man. Why did all the pretty women leave for Petersburg? We're ready to party. We're ready to have these balls and just show them our mustaches and how wonderful and beautiful we are. And they left for Petersburg. How dare they? Things like that. And eventually, after the pillaging, all the French leave Moscow. They take a bunch of property with them, diamonds, gold, money, whatever they could carry. They try to take it back to Europe. That's what led to their downfall. And then it pretty much goes into guerrilla warfare, and the Russians are like chasing down the French because at this point, if you know from history, the Russians burned towns, burned goods, burned food, and all that kind of stuff. Napoleon could have done something to help out his troops and save his troops, but a lot of them died, and then guerrilla warfare started because the French started, they left Moscow and they were going back to Europe because they couldn't stay in Europe, in Russia anymore. A lot of them were dying. Winter was setting in, and so the Russians now pursued the French. A lot of the Russians died pursuing the French. They killed the French, and people are going into the woods. There's battles in the woods. People are slaughtering people, and just there's so many. Oh my God, there's so many war crimes committed and people dying and people being raped, and just, damn, just very unsettling. Napoleon pretty much leaves Russia. The French army is defeated in Russia because they went deep into Russia. They met with the winter. And it wasn't the Russians that defeat Napoleon. And we know this from history. It wasn't the Russians. It was the cold. It was the cold. Yep, no doubt about it. It was the cold. Yeah. And so, the Russians get Russia back. They rebuilt Moscow. They rebuilt the country like a pile of ants. Like, how ants kind of rebuild their colonies. And are ants British? I don't think so. But yeah, just like how, ants rebuild colonies, the Russians rebuilt Moscow. Pierre loses a lot of money because his wife died, so he had to repay all of Ellen's debts. Anatole's dead. Prince Vasily is climbing up in society. Princess Maria is married to Rostov. They have a bunch of kids. Natalie and Pierre have a bunch of kids. They have a deep love. Sonia is left by herself. Nobody marries her. She has no children, and she's pretty much living with Nikolai Rostov and Princess Maria, and she has to watch them be in love and have kids and canoodle while she is all alone in this world when the man she wanted to marry is right there with another woman. That's sad. That's really sad. They kind of make up a big family, and they all came close to each other. Pierre was close with Princess Maria. Nikolai was married to Princess Maria, and Natalie, Natalia, Natasha, whatever you want to call her. She marries Pierre. They have a bunch of kids. They're loving. Everyone's happy. They lost a lot of people. A lot of deaths, but these families, the Rostovs, the Bezakovs, they have a good life, and even Boris and his mother, they all end up rich and famous, and they have status and power in the States and money and power. And the novel ends up in a great place, in a loving place, and it's for some reason, I don't know why, but the novel ends up teaching us about marriage, and being in a marriage, and how Princess Maria and Rostov and Nikolai Rostov, how they conduct their marriage and how they understand each other without speaking, and their each other's movements, and how Pierre and Natalie, Natasha, again, whatever you want to call her, how they love each other and adore each other and adore their kids, and how they get along, and how everybody's rich and wealthy, and Nikolai Rostov went into farming and he made a lot of money for himself. He repaid all his family debts. Pierre, he still made a lot of money for himself. He's still making money, and how passionate and intense his love for Natalie and her love for him is, and all this, that, and a third. And then at the end of the novel, thousands, 1,000-page plus later, we get this is all in the epilogue, and then we get an essay talking about how people, how we view history, how there's different perspectives to history, how ancient historians just looked at the big players of history rather than looking at the whole machine and the whole function and the whole the whole workings of a machine that causes wars, that causes society to move forward, that causes conflict, that causes people like Napoleon to grab power and to abuse it into whatever he wants. So the novel goes into all of that, and by the end of it, you're tired and you're crying for Jesus Christ, because it's a long novel, and a lot of things happen in it. A lot of love, a lot of passion, and wars, and war and peace, and yeah, everybody ends up happily. Well, I mean, Ellen and Anatole and there's a lot of people who died, and the Rostovs, they lost a son due to war. So I mean, it wasn't all peachy, but it was a good ending. In terms of analysis, in terms of deeper meaning, I mean, this video is already super long enough, but let's make it longer. In terms of deeper meaning here, this novel, Pierre tries to figure out the meaning of life. I mean, there's a point where he thinks that he's the Antichrist and that Napoleon is the Antichrist. And that, or if he's not the Antichrist, he's related to the Antichrist. I mean, he goes insane. I feel like he went insane a few times because, I mean, he was crunching numbers down. For some reason, Pierre became an accountant real quick, and he was like, you know what, I'm going to figure out who the Antichrist is. And he was like, is Napoleon the Antichrist? I'll have Napoleon as the Antichrist for 500, please. I mean, Pierre just lost it for a minute. He became a Freemason. He tried to figure out the meaning of life. He met a poor man, a serf who was a soldier, who was a peasant. I mean, this man just loved life. And he learned a lot about life from him and his journeys. He almost got killed. He saw people get executed. He was a prisoner of war and all this and that and the third. And in the end, he's like, you know what? I'm happy to be alive. I'm not searching for the meaning of life anymore. I'm just going to be with my wife who I love and my kids and just live my life happily. So that's Pierre. There's only one thing about Pierre is that by the end it kind of feels like he might lead a revolution against the emperor of Russia or the monarch of Russia, because he's like, there's corruption going on and we need to do something to fix it all. So I hope he doesn't put his family in danger. So, but that's Pierre. Nikolai Rostov, he's like devoted to Russia, to its people. He's all about farming and his finances and doing everything by the book and building up. He's all about like regaining his family wealth that his father got rid of and ruined. So he's all about that, and he's by his demeanor and his persistence, he's going to achieve it. Sonia, her life ends up badly. She doesn't get married to anybody. No one loves her. No children. No nothing. And I don't know how this woman doesn't like attack, because I mean, yes, you're in this wonderful family, but at the same time, you never get married, and you do want to get married because she was so in love with Nikolai. But she doesn't get married. She doesn't get anything. She just becomes like pretty much this glorified servant, which is, I mean, she wasn't a child or a son or a daughter. She was a cousin. So I guess that's not bad. I guess she's not. At least she's not a peasant or a serf, because those people have it worse. The worst lives in this in Russia. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, Nikolai, Princess Maria, Natasha, Natalia, Pierre, Sonia, their children, Boris, Julie, excuse me, end up in good places, different philosophies, different ideals. I think they just coupled off. Princess Maria and Rostov, they pretty much just become one person, because they share the same ideals, and if they don't, they try to share the same ideals, and that's the same thing goes for Pierre and his wife, and yeah. And yeah, that's the novel. More than that, I would say, when it comes to the meaning of life and devotion to one's family for happiness, I mean, this novel reflects that. I feel like the meaning of life is to live it. From all Pierre's journeys, what I gained from it is that the meaning of life is to live it. I mean, Pierre lived his life as much as he could. He was a Freemason. He did all this and that and the third. He tried to rescue people. I mean, there's parts in the novel where he rescues a child. He rescues a woman from being raped by a French soldier. He goes throughout the novel going through several changes. And by the end, he's like, you know what? The meaning of life is for me to live my life with my wife whom I adore and I love. And raise my children and be happy, and I mean, that's a good meaning of life, or what life is as any. We see also what marriage is. I think marriage, for me, another thing that this novel shows you is that marriage can't just be about lust. I feel like in the 21st century today, marriage is, for the most part, it's all about lust at first sight. But for these people, marriage wasn't about lust or sex or love. It's also finances and riches and future and family lineage. So I think the 21st century has sold us this ideal of perfect love and perfect bliss and happily ever after. But marriages are not supposed to be that. They can't be that all the time, because, I mean, you can't expect an imperfect being, because every human being is imperfect, to be that sole source of your eternal happiness. A man can't make you eternally happy forever, and a woman can't make you eternally happy forever. When you get married, it has to be about compromise and living the best life that you can together as smoothly as you can. It's entirely impossible to have a perfect Prince Charming that is perfect all the time, 24/7, and where you guys are in bliss. Certainly these key couples within the novel, certainly they're in love, but they do have a lot of rough and difficult patches. So the commentary on marriage is very significant here. The commentary on society is even stronger for me, because the way that Tolstoy, excuse me with the names again, the way that Tolstoy describes it is that, Napoleon and the major players of history, they're not the ones that make up history. It's everything, everyone, the lowest person to the highest person. They're all working simultaneously to drive change, to drive ideals, and to make things that, historians usually focus on the major players. But we can see throughout this novel that Napoleon lost control of his army several times. The soldiers wanted to be in Russia. The soldiers wanted to pillage. The soldiers wanted to conquer. The soldiers wanted wealth and power. There were several times where he gave commands, and they were pretty much, they were worthless, and the men just did whatever they wanted to do at the time. Because, I mean, in within the midst of chaos and anarchy, who's going to take orders in an army? especially when they're in Moscow and just pillaging and looting and raping and doing whatever they want, who's going to take orders? Who's going to keep track? So that's another key thing about history and about order and empire. So it's very fascinating. Another thing is that, think about it. Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, the Roman Empire, the British Empire, the French Empire, every single empire that ever rose on this planet, they've all fell. Because whenever the empires get too large and so many different perspectives and so many different peoples are part of these empires, they can never work. They always crumble. So I feel like empires will never work. They will never work because it's just, especially back then when there was no, technology just didn't exist. You had to kind of conduct everything through letters and messages and sending messengers. It just could never work. So there's a commentary about empires within this novel from Tolstoy about the effectiveness and the reasons why they occur, and the different ways that we view history and how the viewpoints of history could change by a flip of a coin, because history is shaped by what happened, by how people saw it and who people choose or the individuals that historians choose to give credit to. So yeah, this novel, it's just packed with so much, but you get the deeper meanings on marriage, the deeper meanings on society, the deeper meanings of living, the deeper meaning of existing, of life's meaning, of love, of lust, of why we live or why we should live. And also, I think the last thing I'll say is that the only time you really get time to think about the meaning of life and how you should live is when you're extremely rich, like these individuals are. Because when you're poor or when you're living paycheck by paycheck, you don't have time to think about the meaning of life. You're just trying to eat, have shelter for yourself, and just live for the next day. You really don't have time, because the serfs in the lower class within this novel, they don't have time to ponder over who they're going to marry and how good someone looks. They're just trying to live and eat and survive to the next day. They just live by that, and the next day and the next day and the next day, but that's my perspective on this novel. That's my analysis of it. That's my perspective on it. There's always more to it, especially this novel. There's 1,000 over pages, 1,000 plus pages. There's always more to the novel. But before we go, Alexa, clap.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Yeah, very long novel. If you read this yourself, good job, great job, fantastic job. You deserve it. 100 points. Have a good one. Have some coffee and tea when you get home. Read the book, and I'll see you in the next video.